You probably believe your financial success is the direct result of your effort. That if you work hard, make smart choices, and stay disciplined, the outcome will follow naturally. This belief feels stable. It creates a sense that life is predictable and that rewards are distributed in a fair and logical way. But this sense of control is fragile. Over many years studying how people actually make decisions, Daniel Kahneman reached an uncomfortable conclusion. We consistently exaggerate how much control we have over financial outcomes. At the same time, we quietly minimize the role of luck. This is not a claim that effort is meaningless. Effort matters, skill matters, persistence matters. But they do not operate in a clean, mechanical system where input reliably produces output. Real life is noisy. Outcomes are shaped by timing, randomness, and circumstances no one fully controls. The problem begins when we turn success stories into proof of total personal mastery. We look at someone who accumulated wealth and assume their path was inevitable. We tell ourselves that if we copy their habits, think the same way, and act with the same confidence, we will reach the same destination. The mind prefers simple explanations. It wants causes it can point to. Luck is unsettling because it cannot be managed, optimized, or planned. So it gets pushed into the background. We focus on what feels actionable and ignore what feels uncontrollable. Kahneman's work challenges this instinct. It suggests that much of what we call financial intelligence is, in reality, a story we tell after the fact. A story that makes uncertainty feel smaller than it really is. And once you see that, the way you interpret your own financial decisions begins to change. Daniel Kahneman often reduced complex ideas into simple observations that were easy to overlook. One of them sounds almost obvious when you first hear it, which is why many people dismiss it too quickly. Success, he argued, is not a pure product of talent. It is talent combined with luck. For ordinary success, some ability and some favorable circumstances may be enough. For extreme success, the kind people admire and try to replicate, the balance shifts. Talent still matters, but luck becomes the dominant factor. Not a little luck, a lot of it. This idea makes people uncomfortable because it disrupts a deeply held belief. We want success to function like a reward system. We want to believe the world keeps score. If someone wins big, it must mean they deserved it more. If someone struggles, it must mean they failed to try hard enough. But real outcomes do not work that way. Imagine a large group of people with similar intelligence, work ethic, and ambition. Over time, their paths begin to separate. A few rise very high. Many remain somewhere in the middle. Some fall behind. When you look closely, the differences are rarely explained by effort alone. Small, random events accumulate. A connection made at the right moment. A market that grows instead of collapses. A risk that pays off instead of backfires. From the outside, these results look intentional. From the inside, they often feel accidental. Kahneman's point was not to remove responsibility from the individual. It was to restore realism. Effort increases your chances, but it does not guarantee outcomes. Skill prepares you, but it does not decide timing. Hard work puts you in the game, but it does not control how the game unfolds. The danger begins when people confuse survival with mastery, when they mistake having succeeded once for having decoded the system. This is how confidence quietly turns into overconfidence. And overconfidence is one of the most expensive psychological traits in finance. Recognizing the role of luck does not weaken your position. It grounds it. It reminds you that success is not a permanent personal trait, and failure is not always a personal flaw. Both are often shaped by forces operating outside your field of view. Consider two investors with similar backgrounds. They studied the same material, followed the same principles, and committed comparable time and energy. On paper, there is no meaningful difference between them. Yet years later, their financial outcomes look nothing alike. One appears disciplined and insightful. The other seems careless or unlucky. This is how the story is usually told. But this version skips the most important variable. Kahneman repeatedly pointed to chance as the silent partner in financial results. The environment matters more than we like to admit. Economic cycles, interest rates, political events, technological shifts. None of these are controlled by individual intelligence. Yet they shape outcomes far more than most personal decisions. Being early in a rising market feels like skill. Being late in the same market feels like incompetence. The difference is often timing, not judgment. When conditions are favorable, even average decisions can look brilliant. When conditions turn hostile, even careful choices can fail. This is why narratives about deserving outcomes are misleading. They ignore context. They flatten reality into a moral lesson. Success becomes evidence of virtue. Failure becomes evidence of weakness. Kahneman warned that the mind is especially bad at noticing randomness when it works in our favor. When things go right, we attribute the result to foresight and competence. When things go wrong, we search for explanations that protect our self-image or shift blame elsewhere. Over time, this distortion hardens. Investors who benefited from good timing start to believe they can repeat it consistently. They underestimate risk because their experience trained them in a friendly environment. What they learned was not how markets truly behave, but how markets behaved during a specific period. This is how luck disguises itself as talent. It leaves no clear trace. And because it cannot be measured directly, it is rarely respected. Understanding this does not mean withdrawing from action. It means acting with humility. It means recognizing that outcomes reflect both decisions and conditions. And conditions change, whether you are prepared for them or not. This is where the illusion of control becomes dangerous. Humans are wired to look for patterns. When we see a sequence of successful outcomes, we assume there is a stable cause behind them. We tell ourselves the person in control made the right calls, read the signals correctly, and managed risk with precision. What we rarely consider is how much uncertainty was present when those decisions were made. The illusion of control is the belief that we can influence outcomes largely governed by chance. In finance, this illusion is especially strong. Numbers, charts, and models create a feeling of structure. They suggest that with enough information, uncertainty can be reduced to something manageable. Kahneman showed that this confidence is often misplaced. When people believe they are in control, they take bigger risks. They trade more frequently. They act faster and with less doubt. Ironically, this sense of mastery usually appears after periods of success, not before. Good outcomes inflate confidence, even when those outcomes were heavily shaped by favorable conditions. This is how past luck shapes future mistakes. A person who believes they understand the system starts to ignore warnings. They dismiss randomness as noise. They trust intuition more than base rates. When something goes wrong, it feels unexpected, even though it was always possible. The illusion of control does not announce itself loudly. It feels reasonable. It sounds like experience. It often wears the language of expertise. But its core assumption is simple and flawed, that the future will behave like the past because you were involved in both. In reality, markets do not remember you. They do not reward confidence. They do not care how certain you feel. The most costly decisions are rarely made out of ignorance. They are made out of certainty, out of the belief that this time is different because you are different. Kahneman's warning was not about avoiding action. It was about respecting uncertainty. Because when you believe you are always in control, you stop preparing for the moments when you are not. Once the role of luck is acknowledged, the question changes. It is no longer about how to predict outcomes or eliminate uncertainty. It becomes about how to survive it. Kahneman never argued that people should aim for perfect foresight. He argued for resilience. In an unpredictable environment, durability matters more than precision. The goal is not to win every decision, but to remain standing when conditions turn against you. This is where preparation replaces control. While luck cannot be managed, exposure can. You cannot decide when opportunities appear, but you can decide whether you are capable of responding when they do. This is what Kahneman referred to, indirectly, as investing in human capital. Skills, education, adaptability, and the ability to learn from feedback are assets that do not depend on market timing. Discipline plays a different role than many expect. It is not about aggressive action. It is about restraint, about resisting the urge to act on confidence alone, about maintaining buffers, margins of safety, and habits built on the assumption that you might be wrong. People who endure over long periods are not those who believe they are immune to randomness. They are the ones who plan around it. They expect setbacks. They avoid situations where a single mistake can erase everything. They design decisions so that bad luck is survivable. This perspective removes the pressure to be constantly right. It replaces it with a quieter objective, staying flexible enough to adapt when reality changes. Wealth that lasts is rarely built by predicting rare events. It is built by staying solvent, staying curious, and staying patient long enough for favorable conditions to return. Luck will always play a role. The difference is whether it meets someone prepared or someone exposed. That is the shift Kahneman invites. Not control over the future, but respect for its uncertainty. If this perspective feels unsettling, that is expected. Most financial mistakes are not caused by lack of information. They are caused by how the mind interprets information, by the stories we tell ourselves about control, skill, and certainty. The illusion of control is only one of many cognitive biases quietly shaping financial behavior. Others influence risk-taking, confidence, patience, and how we react to losses. Most operate automatically, below awareness, guiding decisions while convincing us we are being rational. Understanding these patterns does not make you immune to them, but it changes how seriously you take your own certainty. It creates distance between impulse and action, and that distance is often where better decisions begin. If you want to explore other mental shortcuts that quietly work against financial judgment, the link in the bio is there for that reason. Not to promise outcomes, not to offer formulas, but to help you notice how the mind bends reality before you act on it. Because the most important financial skill is not prediction, it is self-awareness.